This is Jeffrey Crivero, and I'm conducting an oral history with Sara Hiott Irrgang. The interview is being conducted at the Zellwood Community Center in Zellwood, Florida on Saturday, March 25th, 2023. Dr. Irrgang, thank you for speaking with us today. Would you please begin by stating your name and telling us a bit about where you're from and what life was like for you growing up?
Sara Hiott Irrgang. I'm a native of South Carolina, and I grew up in a small town, well, several small towns. My father was a school administrator, and you're familiar with the educational system. If you want to go up, achieve further distinctions, sometimes you have to move. So I went to about 5 or 6 different public schools before I graduated from high school. But anyway, I graduated from a small school, 52 in my graduating class. I went to the University of South Carolina, where I did pharmacy pre-med and worked. I had to go to summer school because pre-med part included extra courses that are not in the regular pharmacy curriculum. Then I got my degree and I went to medical school in Charleston, South Carolina. It was the Medical College. It's now the Medical University of South Carolina. I graduated from college in '62 and from medical school in '66. I had, when I was a sophomore medical student, I joined the Navy Reserves, and by that I put in for and received the Ensign 1915 program, so that I was paid ensign's pay my last year in medical school, which helped defray medical school costs, which were nowhere as bad as they are these days. Anyway, I am the oldest of 7 kids. The first 6 of us, my mother had planned. The last one was 9 years later, and she didn't think she could get pregnant at 45, but she did. But anyway, like I say, I graduated from medical school, and because I did my Ensign 1915 program spells where I had to do active duty, the active duty for training, I went to Pensacola to the School of Aviation Medicine to do my 60 days, and I ran into a Navy pilot, and I eloped with a Navy pilot, went to Alabama. And so when I went back to school, the guy that was one of the advanced teachers there said, well, I know what the rest of you worked on during your time off, and I know what Miss Hiott did on hers. But anyway, the thing was that because I had gotten married, and he had been transferred to Puerto Rico, so I dropped out of the regular matching program, and I applied for a residency at the University District Hospital in Rio Piedras, Puerto Rico, which is in San Juan. And so I had my internship year there. And I had had Latin in high school. I had had French in high school. I had had French in college. I had to get a tutor. I had a tutor in Spanish before I went to Puerto Rico. But anyway, I learned basic things. When I was in Puerto Rico, we lived on the edge of San Juan, and my husband drove back and forth to Roosevelt Roads, where he was stationed when I was home. When I was on duty and had to stay over, he didn't come home, so he stayed out at the base. But I did a rotating internship. I had exposure to a few tropical diseases that I might not have seen otherwise, which was good. And when I finished up, this was during the peak of the Vietnam thing, and when I finished my internship, my husband had decided to get out of the service. He'd already served his 14 years. He went to fly for an airline, and then he took off for the States, and I finished up my internship, and then I went to Corpus Christi, where I was on active duty for 3 years at the Naval Hospital there. And what I did was get aerovacs coming back from Vietnam. I worked in the outpatient clinic and emergency rooms at the hospital there. And we would get patients who'd had casts put on in the field, in the mud, in Vietnam. Then they would go to Guam or some other intermediate target, and then they'd be sent back to the closest hospital in their district. And sometimes when I was officer of the day, medical officer of the day, they would call me to come look, and they'd take off the cast, and here was a wound that had been invaded by maggots. The good thing about fly larvae, maggots, is that with the exception of screwworms, which are a bad variant, but these regular flies will only eat dead tissue. So they eat the dead tissue and they excrete a product called allantoin, which stimulates new growth, which is not a bad thing. But anyway, the big thing was you would cover the patient up so they couldn't see what you were doing, clean it up and everything, and then recast it. But anyway, that and looking after the spouses and dependents of people who were overseas mostly was what I did. And I got a lot of opportunities to sew up wounds and look after sick people. But anyway, after my husband had gone to Dallas, Texas, and so as soon as I finished my internship, I had applied for a residency in pathology at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas, and that's where I did my 4-year residency in pathology. And when I finished pathology, my husband had been flying out of Miami, so we were trying to get to live in the same state at least. So he had started flying out of Miami, and we looked for residence in this general area because his mother lived in Castleberry. So we came here, and I worked in emergency rooms for 2 or 3 months until I found a job in pathology. And I worked in pathology. I've been doing pathology, mostly medical examiner stuff, for 30 plus years. And I worked at the Naval Hospital in Orlando until they closed up. I was in the medical examiner's office in Seminole County, and then I worked in the one in Lake County, and then I went to my final ME job, which was in Orlando, and I worked 13 years for them, including for it was a big complex, and it was we would get all sorts of accidents and homicides and things like that. So it was always interesting work. But I began to have problems with my back, so standing on tile floors is not good for your back. So I decided to retire in the January of 2013. However, hadn't been not working for 6 months, and I got a call about, can you please come to work with us at hospice, because I have all my licenses. I have my narcotics license and everything else. And so I started working with them. And I like working, with sick people, and they need people to listen to them and all. So anyway, I've been working for them now. I've got my 5-year PIN, so I know I've been there at least 5 years. But that's my business part. I'm planning on retiring there. I've been planning on retiring there the last 4 years, but I haven't yet. But anyway, as far as moving here, when we moved here, we lived in Sanford. We had a house there. But my husband's family always had horses. He grew up in Chicago. His father owned a stock in the some horse thing outfit there. And so he wanted to have horses for our kids. And in the interim, we had 3 kids. But anyway, we have one that was born in Florida, the last one. But the thing was that we were living in a house in town, so we looked around for land. And we drove over and looked at land over closer to the coast. But you have saltwater intrusion there if you put in a well. You also are closer to the ocean and coast in case there's a storm. And it's harder to grow any sort of grass. But we then looked west towards the St. Johns River and all, and crossed over and into the Wekiva. And so we looked around and we found 45 acres right on the Lake Orange line, right up the road. And we decided to buy it, which we did. And the first thing, we put a double wide out there, and my husband and my 2 oldest kids moved out there while into the double wide, and built the barn and put up fences and everything else. And then after we got fairly situated there, my daughter and I moved out too. So then we sold, left the house in town. But we've been there now since, we bought the land in '78 and put the double wide out in, I think it was in '81, and moved out there in '82. So I've been in this area for quite a while. The thing that is overwhelming about the area is how people have moved in so fast. It used to be, you could drive quite distances without seeing stacks of houses. Now there are developments popping up everywhere. And I get calls at least once a week, letters at least once a week, wanting to know how much for my land. My husband expired from lung cancer several years ago, so the land, I gave 20 acres of it to my daughter so she and her husband could build on it. And we have, right now, I'd say 14 horses, 13 and a donkey. But anyway, we also have goats. We have 4 pot-belly pigs, which are a pain in the butt. I don't recommend them for anybody. And we have a llama. And we have cats and dogs. So we like our animals. So it's been very nice to be out here. The weather has been pretty good. And the only problem with this last hurricane, which came through, it yanked out my telephone line. And my telephone line was out from September 29th until March 15th. It took a while to finally get a real person on the line and have them come hook it in, which meant that I had to rely on my cell phone only for any Wi-Fi purposes. Made it a little difficult too, because I couldn't use my fax machine to send anything either. But anyway, the advantages of being out in this area, the people have always been very pleasant. I have had no problems with people. The water table has been good, no saltwater intrusion. We have a 200-foot well, which is perfectly fine. Mine, it has been very lucky. It didn't have any sulfur in it. My daughter's well, they put a water thing on it because hers had a sulfur smell. But anyway, the people around have been great. I've been affiliated with the Historical Society here for, I'd say, probably 10 or 12 years. I helped them with the sales of the book and with preparing stuff for the book. But the hardest workers, you've probably met some of them, Charlie and Margie and Kenny and those. But the interesting thing is that they have seen fit to start collecting historical things before they get lost. Which the hardest thing is, you save things and you stick them in a corner and then you can't ever find them and you can't remember what they tied into. And keeping up with photographs and having them properly labeled so you know who's who is something that everybody forgets. I have a box at home that has a number of things from my personal family that I don't even know who these people are, But it's been really nice to deal with people here, and the Historical Society has, they have school groups that come here, and they go through and look at all the exhibits and the historical artifacts. And the garden, I guess you've seen the garden out back that has vegetables and such that the kids have been interested in, because a lot of them nowadays, if they're living in apartments and such, they don't realize where their food comes from. I grew up fairly close to the land because my grandfather was a farmer, and my daddy was a school principal. As soon as he came home, put on his overalls, got on his tractor, and went out and plowed, because he had 15, 16 acres. And with a big family, we grew a lot of vegetables. But I found this was a good place for my children to grow up. And my oldest two have graduated from your alma mater, Central Florida, University of Central Florida. My younger son is an Air Force officer in Colorado Springs, and my older son is living in in North Carolina, and he works for a company that does some land preparations and such. The biggest problem, of course, with getting kids to school and such, you never know what associations they're going to have. And I'm very pleasantly surprised that my younger grandson, he's quite an athlete, and he's going to Apopka High School, which means, and he's a football player, which means he's got, his daddy wants him to be a professional football player. Why, I don't know, but anyway. So he is no longer a little guy. He's 6'4", and he's only 16. So I hope he's not going to grow too much more. But anyway, other than, as I say, working with Margie, who died recently, that's Charlie's sister, and Charlie, and all the other people who are affiliated with the museum, has been quite a pleasure. And when we did a special event at the Sidoni House, which you may have heard about, the big residence. It's now, well, they have a private school there on that same plot of land. But anyway, that's a beautiful historical house. And we had so many people who were interested in things, old Florida, because if you don't think of just Mickey Mouse and such, before that there were alligators and hunting and fishing, and some of my relatives had grown up in South Florida, and I know that when they learned early on with the first entrance of Cubans a lot about Spanish, and the thing that I think from my grandparents' point of view, they were very happy that that their daughter had married this guy that was a cop in Miami, and that his kids grew up there, and they were good people. The most important thing, if you're a parent, is you want your kids to grow up to be good people. Even if they're not the great wizards and don't set the world on fire with inventions and such, you want them to be someone who can look in the mirror and see themselves with respect, you know. As far as current things, we were looking forward to this event of getting historical records, because a number of our older people have died in the last 10 years, and we don't like to lose our little tidbits of history, you know, without tying them down. And my daddy's major in college was history, and he always loved that. And so I think everything you can salvage and save and record and keep is went up on it. And I just found out today that the astronaut John Young, his father had one of the big citrus outfits around here. And I didn't realize that he had a connection to Zellwood, but that's true too. So, you know, you get together with other folks and you learn a lot of tidbits here and there. Did you have any particular question?
You've answered all my questions. That was perfect. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Do you have any final thoughts? 'Cause
well, I'm hoping, we're hoping to get maybe an extension onto the museum, because we have a lot of other things that you can't see because they're not in here, they're in storage. And we'd like to get a new roof on it. The thing is, if we can get a sugar daddy somewhere to help pay for things like that, because fundraising, especially in these days, is not an easy thing to do. So that's something we're looking into. We do have we have a meeting tomorrow just of the board, and things. If you hear of someone who has a lot of riches and wants to have their name on a building, let me know. But basically, it's a nice place to live. I've enjoyed living here. The traffic has gotten a lot worse, And the thing is, you have to plan your times of travel so that you don't hit the worst traffic. And I can do that because, you know, a lot of what I do is on the phone and on the internet. So I'm not tied down to a set schedule, you know, of being there at 8:01 or something like that. But as I say, it's a great place to live, and I've been very happy living here. And like I say, I've been here now for, what, 40 years or so?
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
So this has been Jeffrey Crivero with Sara Hiott Irrgang.
Irrgang, yes. Like Irrgang comedies, only
I should have remembered it that way in the beginning. On March 25th, 2023.
Righto.
That was